Jessalin and I share stories about how we go into the workplace and standing out is really hard for us because we weren't given the tools to know how, but we were also culturally told not to. And I always give the comparison of the very American idiom of the squeaky wheel gets the grease. I was taught the loudest duck gets shot. I was taught loudest bamboo gets cut, the tallest nail gets hammered down.
Hey, I'm Tanya Bhattacharya, and you are listening to the Campfire Circle podcast. We are all about breaking down the boardroom table as the ultimate space of leadership, and instead replacing it with a campfire. Because that's where we share our stories. That's where we build warm community, and that is where there's always room. I'm building an impactful business in public through thought leadership, and I'm taking you behind the scenes all along the way. So if you want to stand out as you stand up for your mission, you are in the right place. Hi, and welcome to our final episode of this special summer series of the Campfire Circle podcast, where we're bringing back relevant mini moments from our archives. This clip is from a longer conversation with Bernice Chao and Jessalin Lam, who are the co-authors of The Visibility Mindset, a book that explores a variety of stereotypes and barriers to visibility that Asian professionals face, including the bamboo ceiling and the model minority myth. And while we might cognitively understand that visibility and thought leadership and building our personal brand is important in the workplace, including for us who are working on these community social change efforts at nonprofits or other mission-driven organizations, we might know that in our minds, right? But it is still really hard to butt up against ancient, ingrained cultural norms that tell us to keep our head down, to stay humble, to be seen and not heard, and maybe not even seen at all. Bernice and Jessalin share practical tips and stories about how they reframed this for themselves to better advocate for themselves and secure new opportunities at work. So I hope you find some inspiration through their wisdom. Enjoy this mini episode. I would love for you to tell me in your own words, what is the visibility mindset and what are the unique challenges that AAPI face in growing their visibility?
So I want to start with the title itself. One thing that I grew up with, and I think a lot of people in this culture grew up with, is the fact of assimilation. I always share that my parents, they came to this country back in the 70s and they renamed themselves and they became Nelson, Ingrid. I became Bernice. Like, I was born here, but like, these are very, I would say, white classical names. They're not even a common name. And I think it was just so they could fit in because they knew what they looked like was going to make them stand out. And so culturally, I was taught to keep my head down, blend in, don't rock the boat, because if you do, you will get dinged. And this is something that we all kind of share culturally because our parents did this so that they can make it in this country, so they can make a future for us. And so because of that, Jessalin and I share stories about how we go into the workplace and standing out is really hard for us because we weren't given the tools to know how, but we were also culturally told not to. And I always give the comparison of the very American idiom of the squeaky wheel gets the grease. I was taught the loudest duck gets shot. I was taught loudest bamboo gets cut, the tallest nail gets hammered down. And so when I go into a room and it's a large boardroom of free-flowing ideas like a Super Bowl campaign pitch, I go in that room and I'm like, okay, I'm going to just write all the notes. I'm going to be super attentive. And then I'm going to go back to my desk and have really good concrete thoughts that I can then turn in later. Everyone else in the room is popping off like half thought out answers first thing in their brain. I am not comfortable with that because I don't want to look like I'm showing up not 100% because we were told to do that. And so visibility mindset is like, all this is really understanding. Yes, we get you. We get that this is hard. We know that this isn't just you. This is something that you could have learned. And you're not alone. A lot of people are feeling this way. But how do you have that mindset that when you do go in the room, you know that you have to speak? And are there things that you can talk about so that it's comfortable for you? So whether it's a clarifying question, whether it's, Jessalin had just mentioned this amazing thing to me, even offline, that I want to bring here. Or I can be like, okay, adding to that idea. But knowing that your idea doesn't have to be perfect when you do say it out loud, you're just helping to build more puzzle pieces for everyone else to kind of grow out from.
I relate and resonate with that so much. Jessalin, were you getting ready to say something?
Yeah. I wanted to share for my experience, because when it comes to even the title, the visibility mindset, I think Bernice too, but I'll speak for myself. Like, I've experienced a lot of toxic workplaces and being like the only person of color in the workplace. And when there were times of trying to speak up to get a promotion, I would be passed up for the offer. And then, to be transparent, a white person is hired or promoted into a leadership position that I could have easily gotten. And so that's the feeling of feeling invisible in the workplace. And then that's the reason of leaving companies. And that's why we wanted to create something more of a positive twist of like, how can we create this visibility mindset and teach people, whether it's our community and even allies, of how to support the Asian community, because it's also with our culture, like especially with like Asian culture, I feel like it's challenging speaking up or asking for help. And like that leads to having more visibility, because in order to do that, you like for networking, you need to know how to ask for help. Or to get a mentor, you need to know like what are the things that speak up for and what are the things that you're looking for. So a lot of that, we teach those tips in the book, and it's definitely a lot of unlearning things, that old ways or things that have been taught to us culturally or even through like corporate America from the experiences that we have, and being able to learn and reframe different ways to redefine the future of the workplace.
You are both definitely visible now in a variety of ways. You're launching this book into the world. You have this incredible, community. If you could talk to your previous self who was really struggling to be seen and heard and valued, what advice would you give her?
I'm happy to go first to share, because it also relates to your previous question about being vulnerable. Because the reason I paused before, I was like, let me try to think of an example. But for me personally, and this is probably how it led me to be in diversity, equity, inclusion, is that I've personally always been myself at work. I've gotten in trouble for it or not get promoted for it, but like I speak up for myself because I think of it. A lot of people now applaud me. They're like, wow, you're so brave. But I'm like, kind of look at it as survival though, because if I'm not going to speak up for myself, who else is going to do it? I don't have someone to like sponsor me throughout, like early on, especially early on in my career. So I would say for my younger self who didn't know, like keep doing what I'm doing in that sense of like you're doing a great job, you're going in the right direction, which at that time, like my younger self early on in my career, I gathered a lot of mentors. I asked for help and like really tried to figure out what I wanted to do and pave the way, but not by myself, but in the sense of like building a community and building my network and being able to have those people to lean on when I needed the help. And I say that because I remember early on in my career, a mentor had told me, because I worked in toxic workplaces and I explained what I was dealing with to a mentor. And she was like, you're like an abused puppy and you don't realize it. I'm like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Like, I was like, I didn't get it until now. I'm like, because now I fortunately work in a great workplace. And I'm like, oh, wow. Like, I wouldn't know what a good workplace is when it's my first job out of college or second, third, or whatever. Like, I haven't experienced a good workplace. So I would say to my younger self, if anything, like look for a place that is going to celebrate you and appreciate you and elevate you. Like when it's putting you in for a promotion or creating opportunities and making sure that you're heard and wanting to hear your perspective, because those are the places that are going to help you thrive and grow. And early on in my career, my younger self would escape a lot of those environments that didn't allow that. So that's what I would say to my younger self.
And to add to that, for me, I'm definitely more on the introverted side. When I was struggling, I just held it in. And in Chinese, we have a phrase called "siku," which actually means eating bitterness. And I was taught to never let the crack show. Like, oh, whatever's happening with you, that stays home. That other self that looks really shiny goes outside. And so for me, I didn't know to ask for help. And when I was really struggling, I felt really terrible. I felt really hopeless. I didn't know what to do. And I didn't realize how important advocating for yourself is. And I would tell my younger self, that no one can do a better job than yourself. And you have so much ways to show up in the world that people can really see who you are, and to not be, not to hide things that you're suffering either. Talk to people, have a community network to share those experiences, but also celebrate all your wins. Because if you're not in the club, the bro club, the, hangout dates, the football watching, you're not open to some of those opportunities. And so when first of mind of promotions, opportunities comes by, they think of the person that they last saw. And if it's not you, you're probably not thought of. But you can also write these things on LinkedIn, share it on your own channels. And maybe when they do come up with those promotions, they can think of your name subconsciously. Someone can Google you and be like, oh, it's on your about page. You could just talk about your wins. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you're just celebrating, things that make you unique so that you can be included in those conversations as well. So I would tell my younger self, you're your best advocator.
Yes, 100%. And it's not bragging, or it's not, having a big ego. It's simply, sharing who you are so that others can see you in the light that is intended, and, celebrate you in the way that you're meant to be celebrated. That is great. Okay, so you've heard from us. Now I want to hear from you. Leaving a review helps us so much in growing our reach and supporting more folks with this podcast. And even better, I would love for you to send me a note on LinkedIn with your takeaways from this episode. I cherish and respond to every message, so I can't wait to hear from you. And if you want to go even deeper, check out the show notes to take your next step.